After years away, I finally came back to Oak Ridge Estates, a quiet suburban neighborhood I had grown up in. The house I inherited from my late grandparents had been sitting empty for nearly 5 years, collecting dust and ivy. It was a mess, but it was mine. I spent months restoring it, fresh paint, repaired fences, new garden beds, and even replaced the old mailbox with one that matched the original style. Every nail, every plank of wood, every detail carried meaning. The day I moved in, the neighbors peeked through curtains like I was a new species. And then she appeared, Karen, the self-appointed HOA president, though her term had expired 2 years ago according to the mailbox gossip. She marched across the street, clipboard in hand, and that artificial smile that hides venom underneath. "Welcome back," she said. "We've been wondering when someone would finally fix up this eyesore. Though I hope you know all restorations must comply with community guidelines." I raised an eyebrow. "I don't think I'm under HOA jurisdiction. My grandparents opted out decades ago." Her smile twitched. "Oh, that agreement was temporary. This house has always been part of our community property." I laughed. "Community property? Karen, I paid taxes, legal fees, and restoration costs. This house isn't community anything, it's mine." But she wasn't joking. Over the next week, I found notices taped to my door. One claimed my fence color, disrupted neighborhood harmony. Another accused me of modifying shared property without approval. The kicker came when she placed an official-looking letter in my mailbox stating, "Due to the historical nature of your home and its location within the Oak Ridge Commons, your property is now considered part of the HOA's collective domain." I tore it up and laughed it off until a real estate agent knocked on my door 2 days later asking about community co-ownership paperwork. Karen was trying to register my house as part of the HOA's shared assets through the county office. She wanted control over my land and any profit if I ever sold it. That's when I knew this wasn't just neighborhood drama anymore. This was a war. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. Daniel Price, a man who loved nothing more than destroying petty power plays like this. His voice was calm but cold when I explained everything. "She's overstepped in every legal way possible," he said. "Let's bury her in paperwork before she even realizes what hit her." The battle for my home had begun. By the next morning, Daniel was already on it. He called me, his tone both amused and furious. "Your neighbor filed a community property claim with the county registrar," he said. "She's arguing your grandparents' house was part of a shared agreement signed in 1989, except..." He paused for dramatic effect. "The HOA wasn't legally registered until 1993. That meant Karen's entire claim was built on a document that didn't even exist at the time. Classic Karen logic. Still, she wasn't giving up easily. That same afternoon, I caught her walking a county clerk around my property, pointing at things as if she owned them. "This fence was installed without community consent," she declared. "We'll have to assess fines." I stepped out onto the porch. "You're trespassing," I said calmly. Karen gave me that smug smirk. "Not if it's community property." The clerk looked uncomfortable. Daniel had already warned me to document everything, so I recorded the entire exchange. When I mentioned I had legal counsel involved, the clerk's eyes widened. He quickly excused himself, mumbling something about verifying documentation. Karen, however, doubled down. "You're only making this worse for yourself," she said, clutching her clipboard like it was a weapon. "We have rules, and no one gets to ignore them." "You mean your rules," I replied. "And last I checked, you're not the law." The next few days were chaos. Karen rallied her loyal neighbors, mostly retirees who believed anything she said, and they began a campaign of harassment. Notes appeared in my mailbox claiming I owed community restoration fees. Someone even spray-painted HOA property on my driveway at night. That's when Daniel decided to strike. He drafted a cease-and-desist letter backed by property records, tax statements, and a notarized exemption showing my lot was never under HOA control. He also filed a complaint for harassment and attempted fraud. The moment Karen received that letter, she went ballistic. She showed up at my door, yelling loud enough for the entire street to hear. "You think your fancy lawyer scares me?" she snapped. "You can't hide behind paperwork forever. This neighborhood belongs to the community." I calmly recorded every word. Karen, I said, if you step on my porch again, I'll have you charged with trespassing. And trust me, my lawyer loves going to court. For the first time, she hesitated. Her face turned red, her eyes darted around, realizing the neighbors were watching. She stormed off without another word. But something told me she wasn't done yet. Karen didn't like losing. And when she felt cornered, she got dangerous. For a few days, things went quiet. No letters, no yelling, no Karen pacing in front of my gate with that dreaded clipboard. I almost believed it was over, until I came home one evening to find Orange. Property dispute, under review signs staked across my yard. My stomach dropped. I called Daniel immediately. She did it again, I said, sending him photos. She's filed another claim. He sighed. Karen must have pulled strings with someone in the zoning department. Don't worry, she's overreaching again. But Karen had gotten smarter this time. She convinced a few HOA board members, including her husband, who conveniently called himself the vice president, to vote on an emergency measure declaring my property essential for community development. According to their twisted reasoning, my restored home was a heritage landmark that should be maintained by the HOA's collective funds. Translation: they wanted control without paying for anything. 2 days later, I came home to find workers on my front lawn, measuring and marking with spray paint. I stormed out the door. "What are you doing?" I yelled. One shrugged. "We were told to inspect the property for community maintenance." "By who?" "Karen, she said she's authorized." Before I could even respond, she appeared from across the street, phone in hand, recording me like I was the crazy one. "You can't interfere with official HOA work," she shouted. "You're violating the agreement." Daniel arrived 10 minutes later, perfectly timed like a courtroom executioner. He walked right up to the workers, showed his badge, and said, "Gentlemen, this property is privately owned. If you don't leave immediately, I'll have you charged with trespassing on behalf of the owner." Karen's smug grin faltered. "You can't do that." "I have the documentation right here," she said, waving a folder. Daniel took it from her hand, flipped through, and laughed. "This is a photocopy of an unsigned community draft from 36 years ago. It's not even notarized." Karen's face went pale. Daniel turned to her, voice low but sharp. "You've now committed attempted property fraud. That's a criminal offense. I suggest you lawyer up." The workers backed off immediately. Neighbors peeked from their windows again, whispering. Karen tried to regain her composure, muttering, "You'll regret this," before storming back to her house. Daniel just smiled. "We've got her." Now we let her dig herself deeper. He planned to file for a restraining order and take her to court for damages and harassment. But Karen wasn't going down without one last dirty move. And by the look on her face that day, she already had one in mind. I woke up the next morning to chaos. A sheriff's car was parked outside, and Karen stood proudly beside it like she'd just won the lottery. She had a folder clutched in her hand and that sinister smirk that screamed, "I've got you now." The deputy knocked on my door. "Sir, we received a complaint about illegal property occupation. Apparently this home is under a community ownership dispute?" Karen interrupted before I could speak. "Yes, officer. This house belongs to the HOA. He's refusing to comply with our community ruling." I smiled. "Officer, please wait one moment." I grabbed the thick binder. Daniel had prepared a collection of legal documents, property records, and every single letter Karen had taped to my door. Just as Daniel arrived, briefcase in hand, Karen crossed her arms like she was already celebrating. But Daniel's calm, confident presence immediately changed the mood. He greeted the deputy, handed him a sealed envelope, and said, "Inside is the verified property title, the tax records, and a restraining order filed against Ms. Karen Dawson as of this morning." The deputy blinked. "Restraining order?" Karen's smirk vanished. "What? That's ridiculous." Daniel continued. "Ms. Dawson has made multiple fraudulent claims to seize private property, trespassed, and harassed my client. She has no legal claim here. In fact," he opened his briefcase again, "we've submitted evidence of document falsification to the county attorney." Karen's face turned from red to pale. You can't do this to me!" The deputy stepped forward. "Ma'am, I suggest you stop talking. You might want to consult your attorney." It was over. Right there, in front of half the neighborhood, Karen's plan collapsed like a poorly built fence. The deputy escorted her back across the street while Daniel quietly explained the next steps to me. A week later, the court hearing sealed it. Karen's claims were dismissed entirely, and she was fined for legal misconduct and harassment. The HOA board, embarrassed and furious, voted to remove her from her presidency permanently. When I walked out of the courthouse, Daniel grinned. "Told you we'd bury her in paperwork." I laughed. "You didn't just bury her, you built a legal coffin." Back in Oak Ridge, things changed. Neighbors who once sided with Karen came over to apologize. Some even offered to repaint my driveway where she'd vandalized it. The air finally felt peaceful again. As I stood on my porch that evening, watching the sunset reflect off my freshly restored home, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: freedom. Karen's house across the street had a for sale sign out front. I couldn't help but smile. "Community property," I whispered. "Not anymore."